I feel like in life, there's so much that we can't control. I gravitate towards the things that we can control. And then it was always about creating financial freedom and not the cliche guru sell the financial freedom, but like the freedom to to do whatever you want, to travel, to take time off, to spend with your kids.
From cornfields to high-rises, office to industrial, houses to hotels, and every other asset class in real estate, we cover the people, the projects, and the profit. Welcome to the Investing in Iowa show. This show is for go-doers, action takers, and business owners. It's for people like you who are sick of Uncle Sam taking a huge bite of your apple. If you're looking to get ahead of what's taking place in Iowa, learn who is doing what, and how you can get in on the action, you're in the right place. Hosted by Neil Timmins, an Iowa native who has been involved in over $300 million in real estate right here in Iowa. Recording in studio from West Des Moines. Here's your host, Neil Timmins.
I've got Adam Romano here on the show. Adam, welcome.
Thank you, Neil.
I'm excited you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
Say for the audience to say, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
All right. So my name's Adam Romano. I've been in real estate 8 years in November since I created my LLC. I'm in the Des Moines area, originally from Grinnell, so about an hour east of here. Went to Iowa State. After Iowa State, I landed back in Des Moines, and been in real estate, like I said, about 8 years.
So growing up in Grinnell, small town, you got a heck of a university or college there.
Yeah,
right in the backyard. What took you to Iowa State?
I knew I needed to go to a 4-year college at that time. That was sort of indoctrinated. Got to go to college. And I didn't particularly love Iowa City. So I actually started out, I went to DMAC. I did that whole 2-year at the community college and then kind of figure out what you want to do. And then 2 years later, go to a 4-year. I actually started out as a pre-med in DMAC. And then when I went to Iowa State, I started with the chemistry undergraduate pursuit of that. And I took a class called quantitative analysis. It sounds as bad as it is. And that made me realize if the medicine thing doesn't pan out, I'm not going to be in a lab. So it was one semester over Christmas break. I realized I don't want to do this. And I said, well, what do I want to do? And so I was like, okay, there's a college of business at Iowa State. You can do like a supply chain. I'm blanking on one of them, accounting, marketing.
Logistics is probably in there.
Yeah. So I said, okay, well, I'll figure something out and most likely it'll be marketing. So I declared marketing my major and then switched to the College of Business. Yeah. Came back, did 2 more years, got my degree in marketing, and then the rest was history from there.
So you left and what? Then what?
So my junior year at Iowa State, I got connected to a Northwestern Mutual financial advisor internship here. And I did that, liked the guys a lot. So I was in the financial advising space as an intern for like half my junior year and then all of my senior year. When I got out of Iowa State, I was still at the financial advisor capacity. And I did that for another like year-ish approximately.
Okay.
I really thought I was going to retire as a financial advisor. I really did. Because there's like this whole metric. If you're here 5 years, there's like a 90 or 95% chance this is what you're going to do until you retire. Yeah. It turned up like it was a great opportunity. The sales training was amazing. Loved like the people I was around. I just couldn't help but like feel like I'm just selling people insurance. And we were compensated heavily. If I sold you a policy that cost you $20,000 a year in permanent life insurance, I made $10,000. Yeah. In college, 7 years ago, however long ago, that long ago, that was a lot of money.
It's 10 grand's real money for any college kid at any age.
Exactly. Yeah. That's like probably 25 grand now.
Yeah.
So it was like, I don't know. I felt like I was just pushing insurance and, you kind of get like connected to this like inner circle of people. And maybe this is me making excuses why I didn't end up doing it, but you've got to get referred out to people that have real money. So you start rolling over the IRAs and the pensions and managing the assets. Yeah. That's how you really start building your recurring revenue and your cash flow.
Right.
And I just didn't make it there. Yeah. I just kind of, one day, I think I got like 3 appointments in a row. They canceled on me and I was like, I'm done. And I got a call from a recruiter that's like, hey, have you ever thought about working at Pella Windows and Doors as a trade rep? And I'm like, what?
Hey, what a unique question, because who's thought about that?
Right. And I'm like, I specifically remember I was in the parking lot. I was like, you know what? You caught me on a great day.
Yep.
I just got no-showed by 3 appointments. I'm ready to hear of a new opportunity. So I had no expectations, and I went into the interview, and I was like, interesting. You don't need to know anything about building materials. You don't need to know anything about construction. This is funny, right? Hindsight after flipping how many dozens of houses now.
Yeah.
Back then, I knew nothing about any of that. And they're like, that's not what this is. You're to take off of blueprints of like houses and putting window packages together. And it was like a $40,000 draw against the commission. And so I just thought it was a great fit, the opportunity to make 6 figures. 5 years ago? Again, that's 5 years ago, 6 figures, a lot more money than today. I'm like, cool. So I started out on the commercial side as what we call a trades rep. And then very quickly, whoever was in charge of the retail was like, this guy should be working with homeowners. So I switched from the commercial to retail. And I did that for, I think, about 4.5 years, roughly.
Yeah.
Did great. I loved it. But somewhere along the way, a good buddy of mine named Bennett, do you know Bennett Wilfang?
I don't.
Okay. For some reason, I thought he knew you.
Appreciate the future introduction, though.
Yeah. So he went to school to be an attorney. And during his stint in law school, he started to get really involved with like real estate. And his dad had some rental properties in a couple of apartment complexes in Grinnell. So I went to high school with Bennett. And long story short, he was in town one day and was like, hey, man, like, haven't seen you for a while. Let's go grab a drink, shoot some pool. And so, like, we met downtown and we were just talking. And he talked to me about this book that he read called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep.
And so I'm an action taker. I literally was at the bar and I'm, like, on Amazon. And I'm like, okay, order. It shows up. I get the abridged version that's literally this big. And it's hilarious because looking back, I ordered the wrong book, but I just was like, okay, this guy's like telling me to order this book.
Yeah.
I got the right copy. I read it and like, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I had no knowledge of real estate, how it worked or anything, but like I read that and I was like, there was just something that like transformed to me that I was like, this is what I want to pursue. Yeah. I never had any like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and go do this now. But it was just like, this was ignited. And then I started reading more books and more books and more books and more books, to the point where eventually I started taking action.
Do you think if you had read that book when you were in college, that the outcome would be different? Do you think you had to have a certain life experience and some level of wisdom about, okay, this is what life's like after college and giving thought to what do the next 20, 30, 50 years of my life look like?
That's an amazing question. I have never thought about it. I think that if you read something at one point in your life and you go back 5 years later or 5 years before that, it's totally different how it's going to impact you with your experiences, what you need to hear, what you didn't hear, what you have the ability to receive.
Different because you've changed.
Exactly. That's why I love reading books like Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. You could read that 100 times and you could probably gain exponentially more every time you read it.
Yep.
I think I would have had a different impact. I really do.
Yeah. So you read the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's life changing mentally. There's something that clicks,
mm-hmm.
And then what?
So from there, I started figuring out, like most people, I think the first thing you think of is not how do I find the deal, but I don't have money for this, right?
Yeah.
Like how am I going to do this? At the time, I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any resources. I knew nobody in the investing community. But I did know of a gentleman at the time named Mark Lane. And I know you are familiar with who Mark is.
Very well.
And at that time, Mark actually was pursuing, I don't know what you call it, but he had a thing where he had people get together where he was teaching them about wholesaling.
Yep.
I think if I remember correctly, looking back, he was probably trying to educate to create wholesalers and bird dogs to go out, find deals, and then, do that sort of thing, which is, it's a great idea. So I went to that and nothing really came of that, but I actually had reached out to Mark a few months afterwards and was talking. That's so funny. I have the messages on Facebook Messenger. It's like, hey, if you find a deal, I'll give you a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Adam, that's not the way that works. But you don't know that at the time.
Sure.
I'm trying to like present myself like, look, I'm somebody who's going to take action and I'll give you money. Little do we know that's not how the game is played.
Right.
And then Mark eloquently gave me some sort of response. It was like, actually, this is kind of how it works. And I didn't really say much more, but like a few months later, something had happened. And I was like, I think I read some more, probably watched some YouTube stuff. And I was like, Mark, I'm sure a lot of people come to you wanting something. What can I give you? What can I give you? I don't know what that is, but let me know. In exchange, I just want to learn. That's it.
Brilliant.
I just want to learn from you. Because I thought to myself, I remembered starting to like kind of research more about Mark. And he was doing dozens of deals a month. And at that time, he was massive wholesaling. That's when he had the yellow truck, driving around.
Still has the branded truck. I talked to Mark today. So yeah,
it's not yellow though.
Yeah, no, it's not yellow.
Blue now.
Yeah, correct.
But he was just killing the wholesaling side. I think he was doing over 100 deals a year, and I knew that was the guy.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to him, and I just kind of like, I'm ready, fire, aim. Like that's my personality. And he was like, well, I don't really need anything, but I'm looking at starting like an educational type presence on YouTube. So I'd be looking for somebody that knows camera, and I knew nothing. I didn't own a camera. Guess what I did? I said, I am more than welcome to take on that role, learn that. So I literally go out to Best Buy, buy like a $2,000 camera, start like researching on YouTube how that works. Incredibly complicated with actually creating like some sort of quality production.
Yeah, right.
Right. Especially within your dim lit houses, and there's no like white balance and all that stuff. So it's funny because like if we go on Mark's YouTube channel, you'll see all the videos I created for him on all the thumbnails and everything.
Yeah.
So we did that for a few months, and Mark just like slowly taught me the business. Like I remember going to houses that he bought at auction, or a house that he was replacing the foundation, or, asking him questions. We'd meet up, I'd film him, I'd learn. And like, I just absorbed. And in exchange, like I said, I was creating videos and no idea what I was doing, but I was creating the videos for him that he was teaching me and creating his educational content at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was like perfect for what he was trying to do. One thing led to another. Started to build some relationships. Had Jamie King. I'm familiar with that name.
I've heard.
He was a wholesaler at that time. He had posted on Craigslist this POS house, south side of Des Moines, 600 square feet on like a 20-degree slope driveway. And I went out there because I've got all this knowledge from Mark, and I'm like, hey, I want to buy this house. I think we can flip this. It's going to be worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? Mark connects me to Steve Lipovac.
Yeah.
And we get the deal under contract, and like I'm out there doing the thing. Well, this house was so hoarded out and drugged and everything. There was 4 dumpsters in the basement alone of a 600 square.
Oh my heavens.
I'm talking to like, I'm 6'2", and you're tall. Yeah. The trash was taller than you. You couldn't see the foundation walls. So my surprise after the clean out, hey, we get 1, 2, 3 foundation walls to replace that are so bad that like I can I can stick my hand. They're blowing that
through
bad.
Yeah.
So that was my first feet into the fire. Hey, here's the first house to flip. Oh, by the way, here's 3 foundation walls and every full gut on the inside, plumbing, HVAC, everything. And I remember walking it with Mark, and like, I'll have to send you the YouTube videos because it's hilarious looking back. And we walked through it, did the video. And afterwards, I remember we're in the driveway. He goes, what are you thinking your rehab is? And back at the time, $30,000 on a rehab was like pretty heavy.
Yeah.
30 grand is probably like 60 today.
30 grand on a 600 square foot house.
Yeah. So do the square foot math on that.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, you're probably more like 45 or 50. And I remember like, that was my margin. Yeah. Like that, my heart just like sank.
Right.
He was like 43, 45,000, like on the nose. And by the way, I literally slept at the house to do the labor to get the project cost down. So he was spot on.
Yeah.
Thank God, during the interim of that project, I had a wholesale just happenstance from a buddy that was like, hey man, can we sell this house? I got this lead. It was this roached out firehouse and we made like 20 grand. And that got me enough to get the rehab done where I didn't have to go back to Steve and say, I need more money.
Yeah.
And we sold it. I listed it at, my wife listed it at like 120. We sold it first offer of 98,000. Yeah. That was my first introduction into real estate. But we went on to do another one.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do that and go, cool.
Yeah.
I've had enough taste.
Yeah. I think the saving grace was, I very quickly realized I had the proof of concept in front of me of Mark, what was possible.
Yes.
Right. It wasn't like I was reading about it. Like I see it.
Yeah.
At that time, Mark's sharing with me, like, the checks you had to make and the profitability and like the things that he was on track for his business this month. So it was like, I knew it was possible. I just knew that this was not something I'm ever going to repeat again.
Yeah. How critical was that? The fact that you could see it, therefore you believed it.
Massive.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that keeps people from I think the vision between successful and unsuccessful people is just the tenacity to keep going when you can't see that and being tangible, like within reach. If it's always constantly not there, I feel like that's why people give up.
Yeah.
But it was there every day for me when I was talking to them and like, that mentor capacity. I knew it was possible.
Incredible. All right. So you get a taste there. How much did you learn by going and doing that? Where I'm going with this is you could read an infinite number of books, or you could, or I guess you could stack it, right? Or you can go do one deal.
Yeah.
Because you're going to learn more by in that doing than you could from pretty much all the books that exist.
At that point, I mean, I'm trying to kind of, I was on a reading kick, right? Because I was just trying to take action after the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, another book of like flipping houses for dummies and then contracting, estimating. And like, I literally had a tote, 2 totes worth of books, all on like business and real estate and all that stuff. So, I mean, I learned more in that one house than the 2 totes combined. But I think what it does is it creates momentum of taking action. And that's what it was for me. But yeah, the education, what Steve calls them, the seminars, because they cost more and they take a lot longer to learn.
Yeah. So you moved on. What was the next one?
I couldn't tell you what was the next house because we've done so much stuff at this point, and that sounds crazy. But it was profitable.
Yeah.
That much I do remember.
Did you early, let's call it from that point forward, and that first, let's call it from there to a year forward, were you primarily focused on wholesaling or flipping?
Flipping.
Why?
I don't know. Well, at that time, we were walking a lot of projects that Mark was flipping. So Mark was wholesaling a lot and wholesale the ones you don't want and keep the ones you do want.
Sure.
And so I guess I didn't really think about like having buyers and all that whole process. And I mean, I didn't even know how wholesaling worked.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So really, it was more so just kind of like, okay, I have the resources for this and I think I can know how to do this.
Where were you finding deals at that juncture?
I started getting deals from Mark.
All right. So you were buying from wholesale standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the business of wholesaling is it's a marketing machine, with which I know we're going to talk about in a minute. It's a marketing machine. The way that works is you got to go direct to a homeowner.
And I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole business, right? Versus buying a property from off the MLS through a realtor or from a wholesaler, and you're focused very heavily on how do I kill it on the flip,
right?
Produce a killer product, keep my costs under control, and then move fast enough so that my estimated ARV that I projected today is actual reality by the time it goes to the market.
Yeah. And it's a good, actually, you sparked something, me thinking about that. I was almost like afraid because keep in mind, I would walk seller appointments with Mark or like signing appointment.
Yeah.
And like, he'd go to the appointment and I'm like, how does he know that this rehab is $40,000? Like I'm looking around.
Yeah.
I remember one Southside house in particular. And I'm like, how does he know how to do this? Like, I don't know how to do that, but I think I can figure out how to flip a house. Right. And so with that sort of symbiotic relationship, I think Mark saw somebody that's like, first of all, maybe 10% of people take action. And of those,
I think that's heavy.
yeah, I was going to say, and how much of the 10% are still there 6 months later, 12 months? So I think I demonstrated to Mark, like, this is somebody that I want to pour into. So we developed that relationship. And I was like, look, I just want to be your easiest buyer to work with. And he saw that I wanted to grow. And I was buying a lot from him, and I was never, hey, Mark, can you come down? I was like, this price. All right, cool.
Yep.
And so I think it was very much, I was afraid of what that looked like, learning that side of things.
That's out of the business.
Yeah. I just had to raise my hand and say, okay, I want that deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how were you sourcing contractors? How did you manage that process?
I don't know how many contractors I fired on that first house. When the roofing guy is doing your drywall inside, you probably hired the wrong person. It was a process of elimination of just sorting through garbage.
Yeah. And
one house in particular, we had a really nice, it was one of the biggest and oldest houses in Ankeny. It's like probably 2,600 square feet. It was a big, big house. We had a contractor that was hired for trim work, millwork, doors, cabinets. And I'm a pretty good judge of character, being in sales my whole life. I just, like, this guy presented himself very well. I saw his work. He cared about the job sites, like the questions he was asking me, and we hit it off from there. He was my right-hand man, and it's been my right-hand man. His name's Jeff Brooks, and he's been in carpenter and construction for, I think, almost 30 years now, 25, 30 years. And it just kind of like one thing led to another, that you'd ask a referral for this or a referral for this, or, hey, Mark, do you know a guy for this? And I just sorted through the garbage to get, where we're at today.
Like dating.
Yeah. Yeah. Only usually it's more expensive and more time consuming.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So fast forward. Well, I want to be clear on from a time frame standpoint too. Your work, this is a side hustle at this juncture.
Shit.
Right?
Shit. And let me explain to you.
Still working. Well done.
Pella Windows is not, hey, Mr. Timmins, so here's our window package. Okay, sign here. You're good with that. And then I just get to go on my way. Oh, no. I have to oversee the ordering, the installation verification, the actual physical ordering, inputting of that product, the coordination of delivery, if there are any challenges with the install, and customer service after. I told people, you're basically hiring the person that's going to do everything but build and install your windows. Like, that was kind of like my tagline. Yeah. And that's what we did. So I was probably working 60 hours a week at Pella.
Oh,
easily.
Yeah.
And so we might have days where we wake up and have 6 appointments, and I'd start at 8 a.m. and be in Ames and end up in Newton at 7 at night. And in the busy season, which was like March to October, I mean, you were just go. Things slow down a little bit in November, December. But yeah, I mean, and so on top of that, like 60 hours a week, I mean, I was full-time visiting job sites. At that time, we were doing a little bit of marketing, so trying to meet with sellers. I mean, I'm 34 now, and I look back, I don't know. I don't know how I did it. I seriously don't, because it's just crazy if you would map it all out.
Yeah.
Now it's like you had a long day, and it's like I did 10% of what I used to do.
What's the drive? What's the why?
It's a good question. For me, so for one, I love real estate. It's fun. It's very satisfying to take something that's just undesirable and doesn't have like to look at something and know what it can be, and then have the direct impact to control of what you want it to be.
Yeah.
I feel like in life, there's so much that we can't control. I gravitate towards the things that we can control. I find myself being interested in those sorts of things. Yeah. So for me, I think that's what it was. And then it was always about creating financial freedom, and not the cliche guru sell the financial freedom, but the freedom to. And that's just semicolon, to do whatever you want, yeah. To travel, to take time off, to spend with your kids. My whole life, I watched my father sacrifice his freedom to be home, to create, the typical raise 4 kids, the wife doesn't have to work, very nice house, but he's gone 90% of my life. So there's probably a little bit of that in there. But for me, it wasn't always trying to prove something or trying to get rich. It was just fun. And like I said, my mentor, I saw what was possible.
Yeah.
Your
siblings?
Yeah, 3.
Where do you fall on the age?
Youngest.
Or youngest? How did that being youngest impact what you do in comparison to everybody else?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, my sister's a stay-at-home wife. Her husband's a manager of Fairway. My other brother has worked his way up from so he's college educated and all those things, but he's worked his way up from an interior door builder for like Geldwin to basically vice president, and he's of a cabinet company, and they've moved around like 10 times, and he's on his way to become CEO basically. So he's always had that drive as well.
Yeah.
My other brother has kind of had some like lost guidance here and there and some troubles, but like he's one of those guys, like I would equate to like a Grant Cardone that had trouble in life, but once he finds something, like that's it.
Yeah.
I would say I took the most untraditional route. But I don't really think anything that they did impacted where I ended up.
Yeah. So about 4 years working both, let's call it both professions in parallel.
Yeah, because right after I'm still in training, and I just started the real estate venture stuff. Yeah. It was very early.
How'd you get to a spot and ultimately make the decision to go real estate's it?
Because I made enough money at Pella, and I basically acted like that income didn't exist that I was making from profits of flipping. And so I just was bankrolling. So my now wife, we had been dating for a couple of years, like maybe 2.5 years before I asked her to marry me. But it was starting to get to this point where like a good month at Pella might be like $8,000 or $10,000 in like a great month. But, it's like, well, we've got like these 3 houses and we're projected to make 30 grand and 20 grand and, whatever. And we got this lead coming up. So it started to be this like, not that I was losing money by staying at my job, but what's the sustainable path of what we're doing? And so I remember having a conversation with my wife now, and she's like, well, why don't you just quit? And so I was always afraid to put us in a position, and it was like, after she gave me that permission a few weeks later, I gave it wasn't my 2 weeks, because I had a lot of respect for my boss, who I also got into real estate, by the way, before I left Pella. He got bit by the bug, and now he builds. So that's funny. But I told him, I was like, Jordan, this is what's going on. He goes, I knew it was coming, man. I just asked for respect, give me at least 6 months. And I did. It was like October, and I ended in February.
Wow.
Yeah. So I saved up, I don't know, maybe like 60 or 70 grand. And I was like, I have enough for like a year worth of living or more. I have some money marketing. Like, I can give this a true shot. And there was just something about being young and in your 20s. Like, I was like invincible. I was like, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. The benefit of taking the risk at that time is your downside is not very far down.
Yeah. I think our payment on our house was like $1,000 a month, which was a fixer upper that we kind of like stayed in and flipped.
Yeah.
No kids. Yeah. Super low car payments. Yeah. Like totally different. Yeah. Totally different when you're older and you have kids. I have a little girl now. She's almost 15 months old.
Great.
It's just a whole different world.
So at that point, you are still focused on fixing and flipping?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all I knew. Now, and I'm trying to think, it was probably 2021. I started to look at more of like the asset accumulation side, and started to look at, okay, well, maybe we should buy them, refinance them, all that, rent them.
Yep.
So we started to keep, and we did that about 6 times. At the end of COVID, 4 of the properties just were wrecked, and like the tenants destroyed them and everything. And we had a good bit of equity, so we just sold them off. 2 of them are contract for deeds.
Okay.
That we obviously can't sell off, so we still have those. Yeah. But we started to switch more from fixing and flipping to try to actually generate cash flow and assets. Fast forward to today, and I try to do as little as possible in terms of creating the cash, because I'm more focused on the asset side, creating cash flow.
Hey, Iowa investors, this is Ava Bautkamp, Chief of Staff at Legacy Impact Investors. Have you thought about adding real estate to your portfolio but don't have the time or desire to play landlord? At Legacy Impact Investors, we do the heavy lifting. Our team finds the deals, manages the properties, and handles all the day-to-day operations. Our select group of qualified investors co-invest with us, gaining ownership equity without opening a tenant email or responding to a maintenance call. They just share in the income, appreciation, and tax benefits. These opportunities aren't for everyone. They are for qualified, accredited investors only. If you want to learn more, please visit legacyimpactinvestors.com to apply.
So the last 2 years, 21 was probably fantastic for flipping.
Yep.
And then the rates started to move and the world started to look a little different.
And costs.
And costs started to move, and that one moved real fast.
Yeah.
But both from a material standpoint and from a labor standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What have the last 2 years? What has that been look like? How have you navigated this?
So I'm trying to think timeline here. So June of 23, we went remotely. So I'll kind of like come back to that. But about 6 months or so before that ish, we were, maybe it's about a year. We were doing more wholesaling. I was waiting for the bottom to fall out. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Watching the market I started to go down like the rabbit trail that I knew nothing about, and then making the mistake. Well, I knew real estate, so I can research this and know this. It's like, no, I've had like 6 years of this, right? Like, you're not an expert in this, but I started to think like this can't make sense. So
what couldn't make sense?
The cost of living, where real estate prices were at
21.
Yeah.
The fact that we are, and still to this day, we are so far out. The pendulum has swung very hard one way as a result of interest rates moving up and prices continuing to rise.
Mm-hmm.
That if you look at what the Atlanta Fed produces, they produce the ultimate, home affordability index. And almost everywhere in this country, according to their statistic, it's unaffordable.
Exactly. So the problem was I was too early, and maybe it wasn't a problem, but it was a very conservative approach. So somewhere along the lines, we started to market a lot of direct mail, and we started to wholesale more and more.
Yeah.
So like all of like 22 was mostly wholesaling.
Yeah. Your idea being, let's de-risk.
Yeah.
Let me don't have the exposure on the asset side to the market. Let's just work the marketing game, direct to seller, and then straight off to a buyer who's going to flip it.
The problem with that, everything was working great. I had a mail piece that nobody had ever used in this area. It was actually really cool. It was a check. Nobody had this before me. And how I know it, because my response rate was insane.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the quality I was getting of people calling me, it was great. It worked for like 6 months. We got like 12 deals, 15, 20 grand a pop on those wholesales. And then I spent $15,000 on marketing and got like 0.2% response.
In mail.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 21?
Yeah.
Mail moved hard in 21.
And you know what's funny? I leveraged up a bunch of mail credits to write off my taxes to drop my taxable income for that year. And so okay, let's just go gangbusters on mail. And I was so defeated. And so if you know my start, I've always had the marketing. I've never had to figure out the marketing machine, because my marketing machine was Mark, who had mastered the marketing machine.
Correct.
So anytime that I've marketed myself, it's always been this like, hey, here's the money for this, and just like, I hope this works.
Yeah.
So something like happened and broke in me where I was like, I can't do this. Like, what am I going to do? So for like 6 months, I didn't do any real estate. I watched like the market shifting, we had done that mail. I had one flip fall in my lap through a friend of a failed wholesaler that was trying to wholesale this firehouse for like 50 or 60 grand. We paid the seller $11,000. So that just goes to show you how off he was.
Yes.
And we put 100 grand into the thing.
Yeah.
But that one kind of fell into my lap, and that was the only deal I did in like 12 months, other than the wholesale stuff. After that deal, Luke Shelton, which is a guy that I'm going to highly recommend that you have on here. Do you know Luke?
No.
He's a silent operator, but he's been in this space for almost a decade.
Okay.
He's a creative finance, I don't want to say guru, but he's very, very, very good at it.
Yeah.
So anyways, I know Luke really well. And I was like, Luke, what are you doing? Like, I never see you don't fix and flip. You don't wholesale.
Yeah.
He goes, well, this is what I'm doing. And introduced me to creative financing, which is subject to. And, if for anybody that doesn't know, you're just taking over the payments at an existing lower interest rate, and then you're turning around and selling it on contract, or you're doing like a deed of trust if you're in a different state other than I am.
Yeah. The sub 2 is you are taking that property over subject to the existing mortgage remaining in place.
So I was like, well, how do I learn about that? Well, I was like, are you doing that in Des Moines? He's like, yeah, but also outside. And I'm like, well, wait. How are you doing this outside of Des Moines? How are you going on appointments? Well, I don't go on appointments. I was like, dude, what do you got going on? He's like, okay, so check out this guy, and had some YouTube videos, and like I kind of like saw like the model, and I was like, okay, so the pay-per-click, and then you are sending it out to these different areas, and we're doing this all over the phone. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. So I got connected with the pay-per-click guy.
Yeah,
was like, okay, started sending out pay-per-click. And pay-per-click is amazing because it is an inbound lead rather than an outbound lead, right? The seller is not calling you saying, why did you send mail?
Right.
You're getting their information and saying, oh, hey, Jane, this is Adam. Tell me about your house and what you got going on. Right. Now I'm qualifying them.
That's right.
Do I want their house? Do I want to take on their problem? Does it make sense for me? So the frame is totally different. And I loved that immediately. The second thing I found with the pay-per-click is it was real people. It wasn't like the person that's got 70% equity you're trying to sell them on selling their house. It was like, hey, I'm 2 months behind my payment. Or, hey, this house is a wreck. I inherited this house. Like, these were people that's like, I have a problem, right? They're searching on Google. And so we started doing that. And I always have a knack for like the steep learning curve that costs the most amount of money. First lead, first pay-per-click call. I thought I invented fire because this is a whole nother can of worms. But the deal structure that I had with this deal, we might lose some people here, but I'm going to try to explain it to you.
Okay.
The mobile home should have been worth around, we thought, like $125,000. Okay. That was going to be what we're going to flip it for. So she owned it free and clear. Okay. We agreed to purchase it from her for $60,000. Okay. $20,000 is due at closing. Okay. $40,000 is via a promissory note. We call this term some now, some later. I'm going to give you some at closing and some later. Now, it's an unsecured promissory note. Okay. So what that means is we can sell the house and we have an obligation to pay her.
Yep.
That has nothing to do with tying it to the actual property.
What was the interest rate on that note? Zippo.
Would you like to know how many years?
I want to know how many years.
360 months.
Whole 30 years.
So how do we get that? She goes, well, how long would you need to pay off the other 40? I said, oh, how long would you give me? She said, well, how long are you thinking? I said, well, would you do like a bank? Would you do 30 years? Yeah, we could do that. I mean, I just asked. And so I had no idea what I was doing. This was my first out-of-state creative deal in rural West Virginia, Sissonville, West Virginia. It's about 40 minutes from Charleston in the sticks. Doesn't even have cell phone reception. POS double wide. I mean, just absolute, looks like the Beverly Hillbillies moved next door because there was a family member with land and they basically carved out a parcel and that's where my piece of property was. They died. There's like a double wide. There's an outhouse. There's trailers. It's just like the Clampus. It was crazy. And so that was our deal.
I mean, it sounds like an incredible deal going in because I'm sitting here thinking, all right, cool. You got 20 grand into this and some payment schedule, but that payment schedule is really
time value of money.
Is you getting a tremendous loan. I'll take all the 40 grand I can get to repay at 0% interest over 30 years. I'll take every dollar.
Exactly.
Cool. And so in my mind, I'm like, you got to get your 20 grand back and then a little. And this is fantastic.
So let's fast forward. I owned the property 11 months. 11 months. This wasn't a burr. This wasn't a buy and hold. This was, I couldn't sell it. The rehab was fine. The location was fine. But this neighbor's next door, I wish we could show the people listening because you cannot imagine what I'm trying to articulate here. It was unsellable. And everybody that was interested liked the house, but then the neighbors. We finally got an offer. We dropped the price from like 120 to like, oh, and by the way, this was when interest rates were climbing up.
Yeah.
Right? So
going the wrong way.
So going the wrong way, 3,000 people in Sissonville, West Virginia, which has had a declining population for the last decade. Nobody has money. Nobody has money for even a down payment. I tried to sell it on contract. I couldn't get anybody that would, do it. Funded the deal with my own money. So I've got my own money into it. So saving grace is I don't have a ton of interest.
Right.
But we finally sold it, dropped the price from like 120, sold it at 90,000. I had to put a $10,000 full HVAC system in that thing. So if on paper we paid 20 and put like 20 into it, and because of the way that structure works, I get to write off the full purchase price. So there's a tax savings, and it cost me $100 a month, basically.
Yeah.
But that was my first deal on the remote side.
Yeah.
Since then, we've done dozens since then.
Yeah.
Much different outcomes.
You remodeled that from afar.
I did. I had a mixture of local people and people that came from Des Moines that drove out there.
You sent them from here to there.
Yeah.
We have done a few in South Dakota, but that's about as far as we've gotten, because once I get about 4, that's not true. I've sent the guys to Arkansas. So
Yeah, I got one in Arkansas right now.
I occasionally I can get the guys to go. We've only done it maybe half a dozen times, so I can get them to go, specifically in the winter.
Yeah.
Right? When it's slow and they need work.
Yeah.
But I'm impressed
God bless them.
how far you've gotten them to go.
God bless them on that one. Because, that was like, you couldn't have cell phone reception until you left 10 minutes after you left the property. So let me tell you what that was like, trying to communicate with change orders and like project scopes and, hey, they literally have to leave and then call me. And then Home Depot is 20 minutes away. And oh, by the way, my wife was pregnant for the first time with our first baby on the way during this whole process. And it was a lot of stress. But after this was all said and done, I said, like, if I can get through this, I literally can do anything remotely. So sort of the same experience with that first flip.
Yeah, correct. That's where my mind was. Fine.
I ran the marathon with 50 pounds in a rucksack. Like, I can do this and whistle without the weight on my back now.
All right. So moving forward to maybe not the next one, but a more standard one.
Yeah.
Today.
So we cut out the heavy rehabs. We realized locally, that is my bread and butter. I'm very comfortable with that. I know the numbers. I know the codes. I know inspections. I know the process for Iowa. And said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this remotely, it's not going to look like that. So what is it going to look like? It's going to look like buying a property that is not in terrible shape, but good enough shape where it could need some fixing upping, and we could just put it on the market as is at a reduced discount. So if it's $200,000 for, remember, we're not comping at fully remodeled and updated. I'm comping at, okay, this is a decent comp for $200,000. I'm not in great shape, and here's some things that the buyer would have to put into it. Yeah. I'm going to be 180 or 160. So that's what we started to do.
You're wholetailing.
Wholetailing.
You're buying it below as is value. You're selling it on the market and on the MLS at as is value.
Correct.
Okay.
The first one we did, and this is where it was a breath of fresh air, even though it was several deals after, but in Missouri, St. Joe, Missouri, bought the house for $90,000, and we ended up, all said and done, the closing statement was $190,000, and I never lifted a finger in that house, which was funny because that coincided when I finished the firehouse, which was a massive undertaking, tearing off an addition, new trusses, a full 9 yards, and I made like $95,000. So I literally came within like 5 to 10% of the biggest profit I've ever made, and I did nothing. At that point, I was like, there's a whole new world that we can get into. Yeah.
So I want to walk through the business model mentally. So correct me as I go through. Sure. Okay. Or add any color here. The lead gen, the top of the funnel is pay-per-click. And that is, you have to have a professional. Yeah. I mean, you have to be an expert in that business.
We manage our own campaign.
What?
Yeah.
That blows me away.
I don't know how to describe pay-per-click is complicated, and it's also simple. It's how like the educational space, they have to sell you complexity because the simplicity doesn't sell, and it's not sure. You got to understand, hey, they have the solution to my problem. Pay-per-click's kind of the same way, but at the same time, you have to know enough what you're doing. Yeah. I started with the management, but we in the beginning of 23, at the end of at the beginning of 24, the end of 23, we went to self-managing, and my cost per lead went down, and my cost per contract went down, and I'm not paying $1,500 a month for the management. Third-party management of pay-per-click to me is a lot like contractors. You may have to kiss a lot of frogs. Mm-hmm. You need to understand what's going on there, though. And the thing about pay-per-click is there's 1,000 different ways to run a campaign and how many ads they use and the keywords and there's just so much complexity. Fortunately, I got connected with somebody that's like, this is a campaign that works really well. Just use this. And we started to put that into ours. And it's like yesterday, I got 3 leads, cost per lead, not cost per click, cost per lead was $43.
Incredible. Average cost per contract?
Around $2,500.
What a steal, man.
Yeah.
And then average, I'm going to ask, average revenue per deal?
Since we became more picky, so we started doing more of the holding. So a lot of like the sub 2 stuff and wrapping, which obviously isn't the sexy big cash hits.
Yep.
But the wholetails, they've been like 80-ish thousand.
Good heavens. Okay, so I want to walk through. All right, so top of the funnel is the pay-per-click. Then you bring everything's online. So you're buying everything over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just running the business model. Ultimately is you got to get pictures, decide what you're doing from an exit at somewhere along the line.
Correct.
Right. If it's a sub, you're going to retain this, or if it's going to be a wholesale.
Mm-hmm.
And then execute on that plan.
Exactly.
On the sub 2s that you retain, you're going to take this thing down. Sometimes you got some cash into this. Sometimes you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Are you buying many properties that are in arrears?
Some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the audience's sake, in arrears means that they're in some sort of foreclosure. They're behind on payments. So you got to catch these things up.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit of the sub 2s is the days of 2 and 3 and 4% of interest rates may be gone forever in our lifetime. And so that's what you're taking on. You're getting these things with 30-year mortgages or 25 years left of 30 at 3.5 or 4%.
And it's even better than that because like we try to pencil this so that, let's say I got to give the seller $5,000 walk away. So that means regardless of what you owe on your mortgage, I'm going to give you $5,000 in your pocket.
Yeah.
And let's say they're behind $5,000 as well. And I have to reinstate that. So I'm out $10,000 out of pocket. Well, it's a $200,000 house. Okay. I know I should be able to get hopefully between 12 to 15 on the low end, maybe even 25 on the higher end if the market's doing okay.
Yep.
So I kind of am running my numbers on, I'm going to hold that property probably 60 days, 30 days to sell it, and then give the buyer 30 days before the new payment is due. And so as long as my calculus is close to what my downstroke is going to be from my owner finance buyer, we can do an infinite amount.
Right.
The problem becomes if you start getting too liberal with what you think you're going to get on your down payment and you have to lay out too much cash.
Right.
Then you start missing the mark and then you start leaving chunks of money into these deals.
Correct.
And that's not good. So fortunately, we haven't had that.
If you're a house flipper, execute the burst strategy or do double closings and are in need of money, Little Guy Loans is your go-to lender here in the Des Moines area. Time is money. Loan approvals in 24 hours. Closings in 5 days. Little Guy Loans was founded by Neil Timmins, an investor just like you. Since he has been in over 10,000 homes in Des Moines, there's never an appraisal. Houses, multifamily, and commercial property loans up to $1 million. Check out www.littleguyloans.com.
You're going off and finding buyers oftentimes through what mechanism, what marketing channel? Do you find these buyers who are going to buy it on these seller finance, this wrap piece?
Facebook Marketplace. Yep. And it's just as simple as, hey, this is owner finance property, no banks. And we have a process for that too. Like I don't sit there and respond to every generic click. Is this still available? In fact, I don't respond to those. The only thing I'm going to respond to is anything having to do with you read the description, because in my description, it specifically gives you instructions to go to the house and call me.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, am I going to trust you to make payments to me on a $200,000 asset if you can't read through a description and go to the house and call me? Funny thing is, the people that do, those are the ones we end up signing up the deals with.
When
it's like a Darwinism process.
We just had a going through application process. One of our, after we do an initial screen, they've expressed interest, right? Provide the resume, whatever. We reply back, and it's going great. We'd love to interview you. First interview is it's on Zoom, blah 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 blah. Hey, email me back with 2 different days, and on each day 2 different times that would work for you.
Yep. Don't do it.
Just screen them. You're going to find out who can follow simple instruction, because you can't follow that. For us, you can't follow what I need done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like what I did the last 3 owner finance properties, because things are getting a little tougher, I found the people that I wanted to sell the house to that had probably about 40% of the down payment we were looking for. And all three scenarios, what's the most you could put down today, right now? $4,000, $6,000, whatever. If I give you 30 days, how close can you get to 10 or 15%? And, you know, that time, you know, you're talking 20 to 25 grand for these properties.
Sure.
I'm saying that because, one, I want to know, like, are you resourceful? Like, how important is this property for you? Every single one of those people came to be like, one of them was 17 grand. The other two got the full amount. They didn't have the money today, but in 30 days they did. One of them went to their union pension and got released the money for a down payment program. One of them, I have no idea. They had 5 grand and now they have 17, and we closed a couple weeks ago. One of them, literally husband and wife are a truck driver. They took more routes so they could come up with the other 10 grand. Like, those are the people I want in my houses, because they have skin in the game and they showed that they can do what it takes.
Yeah.
And so I would rather just say no to a lot of people and find the perfect person that's going to give me the most down, because Luke, if you have the opportunity to talk with him, will tell you that the down payment is a massive determining factor if you're going to get that house back or not.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Have you considered selling it on an option basis instead of with the...
Funny that you mentioned.
Yeah, because there's some benefits from a tax standpoint.
Yes. Not only that, but Iowa, which is a beautiful forfeiture state and land contract, you miss it, you got 30 days to cure it, you're done. If you evict them, go to courts.
Yep.
Other states, such as Kentucky, it's a judicial foreclosure. And so if you don't know what that means, is you got to go through the court system, i.e. pay an attorney, i.e. a lot of money. You don't even get the house. It's forced sale. So once we started to really, because we're in multiple states, and they are so vastly different. Each state has its own stipulations and statutes and stuff like that. Once we started to really start, okay, like let's figure out how to mitigate this. One, do we need to do a mortgage, or do we need to do a land contract, or a contract for deed, or deed of trust? What's the most expedient way to get the house back and protect our interest? And two, is there another way? And so the lease option is actually something I've been considering. Because what I wanted to do was do a lease option with a clause in there that's within the legal statutes with rental that basically says, if you ask me to fix anything within 12 months, 24 months, I have to legally, but this will void your contract because you're getting ready for home ownership. And so I thought about toying around with that because I know somebody that does that. And then after 12 months or 24, it actually switches to an installment sale or a deed of trust or something like that, where you know it's a much safer because you've got, a year or 2 years of payment.
Yeah.
So we're always kicking around different ideas like that.
There's a tax benefit there on those, on the, the contract for deed as you're going today, it's coming out of your name, it's going in there, and you may be on title, but it's coming out off your tax return. Right. You're into a contract receivership position. You cannot, nothing's deductible from the asset standpoint.
No depreciation.
No depreciation, no nothing. But on the other side of things, the lease option, it's in your name.
Mm-hmm.
Depreciate away.
Yep.
Right.
And we've actually, so the boogeyman of sub 2 is, will the loan get called? And I know a high amount of people that, I'm not talking hundreds, I'm talking thousands of notes. Right. And it will count on single digit percentage on how many have gotten called. Right. So is sub 2 being called a possibility? Yes. But I'm also a risk averse person, which is funny because like you see some of the stuff I do and you would think it's like, where's your risk tolerance? But stuff like that, let's say I've got somebody in there for 12 months and they'll, hey, we're actually calling this due, not like a warning, but like, no, this is like going to happen. Right. I can just get out of the lease, and get rid of the property. So as we've gotten more aggressive with our marketing, which is basically doubling in 25, that is something that I strongly have started to look into is the lease options. Mm-hmm. The only calculus we have to continue to figure out is how much can I give the payer so that my option contract's still reasonable? Yep. Because I can't expect, I have no experience with lease options. So I wouldn't think I'm going to be getting 10% downstrokes like you could with a contract for deed or a deed of trust.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well.
But, it's like, I just talked to a guy that was a great operator. He's been doing it like 7 years. And about 2 years ago, they started really scaling up. And about 12 months ago, they really started scaling. And he went from $10,000 to $25,000 a month in Google ad spend from a team of just him to 8 employees.
Mm.
In 8 months from starting that, he literally ran out of money. He's filing bankruptcy. The market's taking him out. He grew too fast. Yeah. So I'm always wanting to grow, and I'm always wanting to push and like, like a Toyota Kaizen philosophy, which is just continuous improvement, but so much in a way that is safe. Because if you just do our recipe of acquiring, say, 5 houses a year, a couple cash pops, 10, 20 years, I have more money and financial freedom than I possibly know what to do with.
Correct.
So I have really started to try to look into things like those lease options and mitigate risk.
Yeah. The story you just described, I mean, you have to identify the key metrics that are driving your business as you go, right? Yeah. What's your cash conversion cycle? What's your return on marketing spend? Mm-hmm. You got to know those factors. Mm-hmm. There's only a handful of things that really inside of the vertical in which you operate in.
Right.
That one needs to know: are we on the right path, or do we need to come about face, if you will? Yeah. What are the key things that you pay attention to?
I'm a big proponent of having as much liquidity in my bank account as possible. It makes me feel good. It's how I started. It's how I left Pella. The more cash on hand I have, the better of a position I feel, the better deals I feel like I can buy, the better negotiator I am. So
you feel like because of your liquidity position, you can operate from a position of strength.
Yeah, because if I have 3 years of living expenses and marketing expenses in my bank account, you think I need that deal when I've got 5 of them under contract? No. So I'm going to negotiate like I don't need that deal rather than the guy that's like desperate for his first deal to get out of his 9-to-5 job. Right. So there's a mentor that I had that said the best deal you'll get is the one that you don't want.
There you go.
And that's so true.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. Like in November, in October, we had like, I don't know if it's 8 or 9, but 8 or 9 contracts that were either in the process of being purchased, dispoed, or on the market. And people were calling and it's like, I didn't even want to I'm paying money for these leads. And I'm like, I don't even want to talk to you because I don't want another house right now. But obviously you do.
Yeah.
You do.
Right.
And then, a couple of those fall out because that's just statistics. But it's the principle that the position of strength of having a large cash position, like a Berkshire Hathaway, you just do what you want and be choosy. So I would say my biggest position, I try to look for how much cash we have. I also cost per lead and cost per contract. The ROI, in my opinion, yeah, it's important, but I think what's more in terms of it is sales funnel, sales cycle, and liquid cash position. Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest thing we look at.
Well, that ROI can get it becomes differently skewed depending on your business model. When you're retaining the asset and all of a sudden you're clipping coupons,
right?
It looks different versus pops. Yeah.
And how do you do an ROI on something that pays you $500 a month that you have $30,000 in equity in? It's hard. Because maybe that deal costs you $5,000 to get. How do you do that ROI? And because at some point there's a break even where it's an infinite return.
That's right.
So I try to just focus on just get more deals. Just get more deals.
What does your team look like? What's that structure look like in order to run this operation?
Me. I mean, I'm the general contractor. I'm the fulfillment, marketing, sales, disposition, transaction, everything. It's just me. My wife lists a house if it's local. And then I have my project management / contractor, that's Jeff. But in terms of the remote side, it's just me. What's really crazy to me is it doesn't take that much work. This business is a business that's hard to scale because there's operational complexity. And it's not like I'm selling this widget and all I have is this widget and this by itself is binary. I don't have all these things I have to worry about. Real estate is this fluid, amorphous, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. But I think with our remote model and the systems that we have for it, and I don't visit the house and I get a home inspection, and then do I stick with my number that I said I'm going to purchase the house on based off of what you told me the condition was? It's a very plug and play, and it's just a matter of how many deals do you have. We don't have to worry about money constraint because we have private lenders that we can borrow the money from. I think our problem is going to be a fulfillment problem in 25 because I'm only so many hours in the day, and we're going to be going from spending about $4,000 a month to $9,000 a month in ad spend. Yeah. So that's the thing I'm making sure, the fulfillment side. But if I'm not doing huge rehabs, what's my fulfillment? It's not that big. Put a lockbox on the property.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're right. Yes. If you take hours out of one bucket and place them in the other, and really dial it in.
Yep.
The fastest part of a river is where it's most narrow.
Yeah.
You can concentrate and zero in on the pieces of your business, right? That really are the things that move the needle.
Yeah.
You can move pretty quick and get a lot of things done. And what you've said multiple times here today is simplify.
Well, I think the other thing is being choosy with what you want to spend your time with. There's just some deals like I won't even call because it's not in my area. It's really rural. And some people might be like, oh, that's a waste of your money. But it's like, I don't know where that is. I don't know where that, because this is national pay-per-click. Like, I don't get leads that it's exactly where I want to be all the time. And so, but if I know I'm not going to do the deal and I know I don't know the numbers and it's a single wide for $70,000 in an area, it's like, it's not even worth it. So is it worth your time? And then what's the actual, does this deal make my life better? That's a litmus test that we use.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, I don't want a part of it.
What are you most excited about in 2025?
Consistency. half of 24 was turning the marketing machine on. My daughter was born and had a rocky start to life in the NICU. She's, God bless, everything's fine.
Good.
But I shut the machine off. I mean, I was in there, machines beeping and stuff. We're in there 24 hours a day. Like, I can't take leads. So I turned that off. And then we turned it back on, like I said, like February, March. So we haven't had a full year, but 25 is not just a full year, but double what we're doing now. So I'm excited for that. Where can we get to?
Ready for the final 3 questions?
Ready.
If you had one piece of advice for your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Think in terms of not how much money you can make, but how little you can have in terms of debt, and focus on creating like your first cement block wall of cash flow to meet your your cost of living. Because once you do that, you're bulletproof. You can start building on that. I made the mistake, kind of scaled up. This is our 5th house in 7 years. So we it's not like we overextended ourselves, but had I started out and been a little more conservative, I probably could have kept a lot more properties. But because I felt like I kept needing more money, I had to keep flipping more.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the last year and a half that I really started to throw in more assets.
Why did you feel like you needed more money?
I think like you just always think the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like benign. It's like, oh, well, this house is nicer. And then it starts to like, well, now you're looking at houses, or like, I got to get a new truck because I want to save $50,000 on my taxes. And it's like, well, but your payment's $500 more a month now. Well, yeah, but I got to save the $50,000. And then next thing you know, right, I tore all that down in 24 June-ish. 24 this year. We got a house in Ashworth, and I was going to flip it, but we sold our new construction and moved into that, and now there's a ton of equity, and we basically have no mortgage. So I reversed time, and I went back to simplifying things, and now that's why I'm accumulating assets, because I'm in a position I can do it again.
Outside of Rich Dad Poor Dad, give me 2 books that changed your life.
Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Have you read that one?
An Iowa native.
I did not know he was from Iowa. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a big one. I'm really trying to think what else sticks out to me that I read, because I read so many books over time. I'm drawing a blank. I really am. I'm drawing a blank on what else I would put in there, because
have you read Pitch Anything?
I have.
You mentioned frame control early on, which made me think of Warren Clive.
Yes, and that's exactly where that came from.
Yeah.
The Millionaire Next Door is a great book.
Tom Stanley.
Yeah.
He wrote the book that changed my life, The Millionaire Mind. It was all, not just, The Millionaire Next Door was wonderful. Like, what do they look like? The Millionaire Mind is, how do they think? How do they operate? What's their take on things? How do they raise their children?
Mm-hmm.
23 years old and write it. That one did it.
I'm going to have to get that, because I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, I would say The Millionaire Next Door and Never Split the Difference, aside from the Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah.
If If you were cast away on an island for a year, you can only get 3 pieces of data about your business each and every month. What 3 things must you know every month to know how your business is running?
Cash balance, cost per deal, average deal profit. I think that you don't need anything else other than those 3.
Adam, I love this conversation. I appreciate you being on here. Say for the audience's sake, somebody wants to find you, follow you, connect with you. What can they do? Where should they go?
I'm on Facebook, although I took it off of my phone. I still, and I did that intentionally. I took Instagram off my phone. I took Facebook off my phone. I don't have Twitter, but I'm on Facebook. Why? It's a distraction. I mean, even though you sit there, it's 30 minutes, and like I'd rather spend time with my daughter or talk to my wife. Yeah. I just feel like we are inundated with so many distractions, especially like if a lead comes in, I have to stop what I'm doing. So I try to remove the distractions. I'm still on Facebook though, so you can find me on there. Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. Humbled that you asked, and yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the show, may I ask a favor of you? Naturally, subscribe so you never miss an episode. But would you rate and leave an honest written review on Apple Podcasts? It does a lot for us here at the show, and I appreciate reading your thoughts. Great guests make for a great show. If you know of another island who would be a great guest, or you yourself have interest in being a guest, well, get on our radar. Visit Investing in Iowa to fill out an application or recommend a guest. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one, go to LegacyImpactInvestors.com. Click on the Invest With Us button in the top right corner, and there you can pick a time for the 2 of us to get on the calendar and connect. Until next time, keep investing in Iowa.